Well, hello everybody. We're back again, and it's not me this time, it's Robin. He's here for a couple more days, so we thought we'd get him to talk to you. And I'm just sitting by the side listening to whatever comes through, because there will always be information I haven't heard, there'll be information you haven't heard, and I think he's going to talk about his apprenticeship into mediumship, or he doesn't like that word, into whatever it is he is, the channel, the psychic, the boy that I know and love. So over to Robin.
Well, hello guys, nice to see you all again, and thank you for coming back to listen to some caring words once again. Having watched the previous video that Sam very kindly put together rapidly, I see myself in a different way. You know, when you look at yourself or you hear yourself on the answer phone at home, you think, who is that person? And it's you. So, because you so rarely see yourself as other people see you. So I look at my mannerisms, my little shake of the head, my nervousness, my look when I'm searching for an answer for something, and all those things. Yet one thing that I learnt from it was the fact that an awful lot of the information that comes through here, I'm hearing for the first time, just like you. And I'm going through the same sort of, wow, I like it, that's interesting scenario that you might be going through, because it's new to me too. Even though it's coming down as if I've got it logged in here, it isn't. It's not logged in here. It's coming from out there. Anyway, there were bits and pieces that were undoubtedly missing, and I'm very thorough with the things that I do. I like to make sure that, you know, the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, so we can get a complete picture, or try and have a complete picture of what it is that I'm trying to portray as an individual. Because, you know, my own personal battles with information, and maybe battle isn't the word, but, you know, trying to acknowledge what all these things mean and put together a scaffolding. I look for all the little clues and they come together, and often they come over a good long time, so you have to see which pieces knit together like a jigsaw puzzle. It doesn't come together all in one go. The picture gradually works from the outside, and all the different colours come in, shapes start forming, and then you get an almost complete picture, and then one day the complete picture comes. That's when I can go, okay, that utility has been gifted to me, I'm happy out. So I'm going to portray basically where it all started for me. Now it might sound dull and boring, but you see, what happened to me is very similar to what happens to many people that work in these fields, which is growth, learning, hard falls, bashes and bangs, emotional outbursts, feelings, anger, all those sorts of things that human beings need to go through to learn. It's as simple as that. We're not here to be a being of light straight away. We're not coming for those sentiments. We're coming here to learn and grow. There's also other aspects to that too, which we'll get into a little bit later. But my first memories really of when I knew possibly, well, I certainly didn't know back then, but I was beginning to realise that I was amongst a family that were very different to me. I was feeling differently, yet they were my mum and my dad and my brother and my sister and me and a stepfather at the time. And these people around me were doing and thinking very different things to me. And I was sitting at home and I was trying to work out when it was. I was down on the Isle of Wight the whole summer of 1976, which was the hot summer. If anyone remembers that. It was the hot summer, so I know that it wasn't then. I didn't come down in 1977, but I did in 1978. So it was then. And I'll tell you what happened. My sister came back from the island in 1977. I had gone somewhere else, and I don't know where it was. Maybe I'd stayed at home. My best friend at the time, his family had a farm and I loved working on the farm and helping them with the baling and getting together and stacking up trailers with hay and straw, and I loved all that, and it was fantastic. And you were allowed to drive the tractors and things like that. It was all very exciting for a young lad growing up, and we had mischief personified inside our heads. We imagined all sorts of things, and I think the imagination of a child that doesn't have the internet, and they don't have many toys, and they don't have all the other aspects, your imagination has to go into free fall. And if you live in the country and you got next to nothing, that's all you have. It was magical. Tom Sawyer-esque, that's what I call it. So anyway, I remember sitting at home outside. It was a hot summer's day. My sister had just come back from the Isle of Wight, and a name is going to crop up that you've all heard of before, Margot Williams. She started talking about Margot Williams and how my auntie Carolyn had met Margot locally and so on, and she had been on Nationwide and so on, and all these things. And I was listening to these stories, absolutely spellbound by, wow, that is what I'm interested in. Yes, I love farming. Yes, I love, reading war books and other bits and pieces like children did, but that absolutely encapsulated me totally. And she proceeded to tell me what she knew, and my sister was 3 years younger than me. I was only 13 at the time, so Rebecca was 10. And she told me, what happened and what was going on, and Margot did this automatic writing, and I was like, wow, I need to get down to the island. So I went down there when I was 14 in 1978 or 79. I can't remember when it was, probably 78. 13 or 14. And of course, Carolyn was busy with her life doing what she does, and busy with the family, busy feeding people, not only her own children but others. And she lived in a house not very far away from the one we're sitting in now. And there were floorboards missing. There were bits falling out the ceiling. You walk halfway up the stairs and one of the stair treads was a bit dodgy, so you didn't walk on that one. It was a hammer house of horrors, yet there was heart inside there. And there was a family unit functioning very well. And everyone seemed to muddle around all these things that were around. They were running an antique shop at the time, and Carolyn was doing upholstery, Reg was buying and selling furniture. It was life, everyone's life, normal stuff. Yet I had this burning question inside me. What was this all about? So, we can go on embroidering stories, but eventually I pinned Carolyn down and she started talking about these things when she had spare time. And I was hooked. It was as if I had latched onto something that I knew was important, yet I didn't know its importance. And from that point onwards, my only connection with what I called back then spirituality was coming to talk to Carolyn down here on the Isle of Wight. When I went back to the mainland and back up to Surrey, where I lived, I was disconnected from it, and we were just doing normal stuff, so that side of me was gone. All I had was my feelings and remembrance. But anyway, that's where it started. That's where I think it started anyway, but it started before then. But the next time I came down, now actually rewind that, first time we came down, I was invited to go with Margot, Carolyn and Wally on their first Earthbound release, which Carolyn has read. And do you remember?
First find.
The first find.
Very first find, you were with me.
And it was the most it was just remarkable, absolutely remarkable, and it was so emotional. Carolyn's read that one, and it was in one of the very, very first videos she did. The next time I came down, I sort of, please can I come on in another one, and Margaret was always quite coy about allowing people to come along, and quite rightly so, but I managed to squeeze in the car, and off we went to the Hoy's Monument. And a story came about, and I can't remember the story, but we had to find a little trinket, and we were told to look around the Hoy's Monument. Wally was going around with some divining rods, and Carolyn and Margot were scratching around in the undergrowth. And then I looked at the Hoy's monument, and as it came down to the base, it was stepped. And the steps were only like 2 inches, and then there was another step. It's kind of corbelled out, that's what we call it in the building trade, to a big base. And as I'm looking over there, this thing like Star Trek, it's really remarkable for a child looking at it. It appeared. It materialised in front of me, and I'm going, blimey. And it appeared. It was only about 2 inches high, and it appeared. And as it came to full form, it toppled off the edge and dropped down onto the ground. So I found it, and I went and picked it up, and it was slightly warm. And I've found it. And I couldn't believe what my eyes had just shown me, because it was so not what you expect to see. Yet, at my age now, I can understand how that happened. So, these are where my mind was pricked, and I was taken to different places, and I had to think about what all these things meant. And the other thing is, you've got life to consider. You know, you're a young lad, you're trying to go through all the emotions of puberty, of people upsetting you and letting you down, the usual things that goes on in life, you know, friends, family or whatever, because you've got expectations, as we all do. So my life continued much in that, and Carolyn provided me with so much knowledge. My thirst for knowledge was different to Carolyn's, because we have one thing greatly in common, not only the bloodline, but we have a care and compassion for the world, the universe and people. We both have that, and that's something that's innate within us. And, you know, we're not sitting in front of these cameras and spending an awful lot of time doing any of these things for monetary gain, because that's not what it's about. The revenue that we get back is knowing that if one person, just one person, gets something good and welcoming from the words that come from Carolyn and myself, if that makes a difference, then we've made a difference. Because, as I said in the last video, you do not know when you are talking whether that is going to make a difference to somebody. You can only feel that, you know, if you heard those words yourself, would it make a difference to me? So that's what I try and hope to do. I know that that's Carolyn's main remit, really, is to be able to share this information. Anyway, I'm going to move you on, because you're going, oh, why is he telling me these stories? There's a good reason for these things, because to get from where you are here to over there, there's a journey. And if I just start at the point here, at point B, and I don't share the journey with you, you don't understand how this person has got from there to there. Because, you know, to become a good artist, or to become a racing driver, or whatever it is you choose to do as a person, whether it's being an accountant or just putting library books up on a shelf, you don't get good at it straight away. You've got to do a little bit of hard work and watch other people, learn from your own experiences and mistakes, graze your knee, get up, put a plaster on and get on with it and brush yourself down. That's what you do. You're always going to meet people in the working place that do not suit you. There's always going to be an awkward one that tells lies. There's going to be somebody that tells jokes when you don't want to hear them. There's always the different gamut of human beings displaying something to you so you can learn from them. That's your stage set. The script is written by you, finally, you know. So, a little bit later on in my teens, in my early 13s, you know, I do remember I used to get nasty ghouls visit me at night. Now, if anyone's watched the previous video from way back, they might have heard this story, but it's part of the story. Part of me reporting to you what a way shower is, what that means, what is the process, and why you, us, we are here to show love and just beam out that love when it appears more than apparent that maybe not everyone else is doing that, and it might be you, and you're thinking, well, I'm at home on my own doing this. What is the point? It's a big point, and hopefully I can portray to you what that point is. When I was a child, from a very young age, I'd be woken up literally just at the point of going to sleep. I'd be dragged out of bed by nasty, ghouly, spooky things across the floor, and they tried to pull me either out through the wall, up the wall through a window, or up through the ceiling, depending what went on. And I knew it was going on because I could see the moon outside and the stars, and I could hear Mum and Dad downstairs. Mum would often hear a thump on the floor and come and pop me back into bed again. The process started again. It was a really terrifying experience for a young child to go through. And you just naturally assume that's normal for people, and it isn't. But it was normal for me. And eventually, to cut a long story short, after going through that for years, I realised at a very young age the only thing that I was actually doing was spilling fear out of my body towards these beings. And they were feeding on that. I was spilling fear. Not only fear, but I wet my bed as well because I was terrified. So, you know, as my bed soaked with sweat and worry, I one day clasped my hands together and I said the Lord's Prayer, and I said, "Dear God, please help me." And I sent these beings some love, and I said the Lord's Prayer, and they morphed and left the room. So I thought, okay, that's cool. That is how I do it from now onwards. And whenever this happened to me, that's what I did, and it seemed to have varying effects. And you might say to yourself, well, that's not very nice. No, it wasn't. Certainly wasn't very nice. But what's it about? Why did that happen? I'll get to that. My theory about it anyway. So when I got into my early 20s, I can remember I was living with my girlfriend at the time in Sussex, and one of these ghouls were right by my bed, literally to the right hand side of me. She was to my left, I could see her, she was fast asleep. And this ghoul was there, and it was a nasty looking thing that you might see on a cartoon or something, you know, with chains and drool hanging from its lips, and terrifying. I clasped my hands together and did my prayer, but it didn't leave. So I was shocked by that. But at that point in time, one of the most amazing things happened. This being changed and morphed into a being of light. And it said to me, "Never worship fear when you have love, my child. You have learnt the lesson of fear. Please remember." And off it went. I went to sleep and didn't really think too much about it. Now that was in my early 20s. At that point, I'd got very caught in the material world, making a living for myself, paying the mortgage, having fast cars, you know, nice clothes, and all the things that youth get involved in. Yet I was empty, like a bottle with nothing in it. I wasn't happy, I was stressed, I was worried, I was concerned. The only solace that I had as an individual was coming down to Carolyn, which I probably did 3 or 4 times a year at that point, because that was my safe place, and she just nurtured me and looked after me and frankly kept me alive. And, you know, I didn't know why or what was going on, but that's what Carolyn did. And I thank you for that.
Bless you.
And, you know, when you're desperately trying to find your place, and you remember in the previous video I talked about the heart that gets crushed because you come here with an open heart, and it's very difficult to keep that open when you've got people poking and prodding it. So you put it in a gilded cage to make it safe, but you shut yourself down in that respect, but that's what you do. So anyway, I was heading down a very dark road of unhappiness and darkness. Not in the fact that I was considering removing myself from this planet or anything like that. I just wasn't a happy bunny at all. And, you know, most people can go, well, we've been there. And you learn when you're in those places that, you know, when you get right down to the bottom, you can't go any further. So there's only one way up, and that's back out again. And thankfully at that point, I never took drugs. And yeah, I drank too much like most kids do, but I never did drugs. and I never, got into abusive scenarios. But I'm just venturing slightly into negativity here, and I don't like that, but we have to see where it goes and what it does. It certainly wasn't for me, and I didn't want to go there. So I, at the time, was running a small building firm. I'd started a small building firm. I'd finished my apprenticeship as a carpenter, and I'd left the company, and I'd set up a small building firm, and I had a guy working with me, and I'd been praying at night for more work because it was drying up, and I had this guy and I had a van to pay for and all the worries of paying the bills, really. And I prayed, please God, can you give me some more work? I need to keep things going, and that's what I thought I needed to do. And on the Friday we put a scaffolding around the bay window, and our job on the Monday was to go and repair the bay window, and the guy that was working with, he was working just around the back on another window. And I went up onto the scaffolding that day and stood on a plank, and it tipped. And I fell forward with a bucket of tools in my hand. And I saw the gutter directly in front of me, and I thought, well, if I fall forward and grab the gutter, I'll stop my fall and I can just swing round and slide down the wall onto my feet. But as I let myself go forward, it broke in my hands, and I fell headfirst down onto a curb edging. It's 10 feet, bang, headfirst down onto a curb edging below. Now, if anyone's had a nasty fall, you'll know that isn't going to be very good for you. And it certainly wasn't. The Blues and Twos were invited to the house, and they took me away in an ambulance. And I went off to hospital, and I'm sitting there with congealed blood down the side of my face, large bang on my head, and a nurse sewing my head up. And the doctor came in and said, "You're a very, very lucky boy. We can't believe it. You haven't broken anything. You had no concussion. We cannot believe this. This is miraculous." He said, we're going to put you in the accident emergency unit for the night, as a precaution, just in case there's some complications. So if anyone's been in an accident emergency ward, they're not great places to be, frankly. They're saving lives. Their lives, sadly, finish there too. So I'm laying in bed, and I eventually get to sleep with all the commotion and life support systems beeping away beside me. And I'm woken up as if somebody shook me. And I woke up and I could see somebody moving in the corridor and a clock on a wall. So I knew I was present. Right at the end of my bed was a glowing light. Another one. Something going on here, isn't there? Glowing lights. Me. Anyway. Glowing light at the end of my bed. And it moved around and up the side of my bed, and it was quite frightening, really, because you don't know what these things are, and you're only young. And I suspect even today, if I had that, it might shock me slightly. But it wasn't sinister in any way or form. It was a being. This is what I think it was. I think hospitals are places of high intensity of focus towards well-being and people passing away. And I believe it was an angel. That's what I call it. So that's the terminology I'll use. And it came round, and it was here, and then it melded with me. It came into me, and I felt the bubbles going up down my spine, and then I remember nothing. So from that point onwards, my life changed dramatically, but I wasn't prepared to change as a youth. And I fought and fought what it was that was going on inside me, and eventually things came to a head, and I was given another huge warning. So the bang on the head was the warning. Now I remember reading, Carolyn actually gave me a book, I'll just grab it. It's called The Psychic Warrior by David Morehouse. And I read this book, and he went through pretty much similar things to me. And it's not till I read it again that I realise that, they were very similar. And the big indicator to him was when his life changed, was when he had a serious bang to the head. Now, whether my bang to the head was somebody going, "Would you wake up, Robin?" I don't know. But, I do suffer from it. I have a slightly canted neck, and my spine was put into curvature because of it. But nevertheless, it was a wake-up call to me. I know that. I also know that what it did was it opened up a avenue that might have not otherwise opened up. Why you have to go through a bang on the head, I don't know. But sometimes, in the old days when the television went to nothing and you had this big white dot in the middle of it, you went over and you got a good old bang and BBC came back on again. So maybe my BBC came on at that point, I do not know. So if you like the analogy, take that one away with you. So there we are, 2 incidences, light, very profound, lots of things going on in between, life and so on. Now, you might go, well, a lot of these things seemed fairly fearful and unpleasant. They were. But there was good times in between too. But that's called life, that fine balance between sort of anger and anxiety and love, care and fun, and this parity called neutral somewhere in between. And if you could be somewhere in between those and in the neutral zone, that's a good place to be. It's not a great place to be up there in anger zone all the time. And frankly, if you try and stay happy all the time, that's quite difficult too. I'd love to. But we know that does not work all the time. So, if you can stay in neutral zone, that's a good place to stay. So that's what I tried to do. Now, my channeling started at 30 years of age. Prior to that, I'd had all sorts of engagements with lots of different things that taught me huge lessons. Becoming a channeler is not easy. Because prior to that, your body's practicing being one and you're wondering what is going on. Why are these words coming out of me? I don't know what those are and what they're saying, and why have I got this feeling of inertia inside me, like somebody's pumping you up like a helium balloon and you're going to pop. And the reason why is you've been downloaded with information into your energetic self. And you've got to appropriate that either through words, through sound, through motion, through singing, or whatever it is you do. That's how poets get their sonnets. That's how songwriters get their lyrics. That's how artists get their paintbrushes and strokes across a beautiful canvas. This is what's happening. You're getting a download of something, and if you don't use it, it becomes a repression and it builds up like water behind a dam. So at 30 years of age, my channeling started and words came out, and Carolyn's spoken to you about those things. Now what I'm talking about here is the spiritual apprenticeship. Now at that point, I certainly had no idea where it was going to take me. I had no idea that these lessons, these words that were coming through me, or what I was hearing or feeling, were taking me somewhere in particular. Certainly taking me to this point here, where you become capable or culpable to be able to see and appropriate what exactly is going on, or something close. Because us as human beings do not have the wiring to be able to use our mind to be able to look into the quantum aspects of information. And the moment you move out of our realm, this is the realm that we're in, this point, you're into quantum. And that's different. You know, our scientists don't really understand quantum stuff, certainly the ones that we're allowed to hear from anyway. There's a lot of understanding of it elsewhere, but that's another story. So anyway, I've been taken to this point. I've been shown so many wonderful things, experienced the gamut of fear, the gamut of love. Why? Because you need that to be able to have the strength to have your own conviction, to understand that the truth you are gifted through this wonderful device which I talk about, your heart, You know, I didn't really start working with my heart, as I said previously, till I was 50. Prior to that, I was having a go at it. But, you know, things changed for me, circumstances came along. And there have been so many people that have helped me along the line and taught me incredible lessons. You know, there's so many things I could discuss with you here, which most of you will know, and all we're doing is reconfirming information we have. So there's no point doing that. You know, if you're working with love, you know it's important that to open and close sessions. If you open yourself up to energy, always make sure you close yourself down afterwards. That isn't closing down in the fact that you close all your meridians and chakras and auric fields down. It's actually you open a door and you close one. You know, every time you work or heal or work with somebody and you impart and engage with them because they've given you permission to do so, you make sure afterwards that you close that session down. It's a little bit like opening a conversation up on a telephone, and you pick it up and you dial Bob and you speak to him, and then when you finish with Bob, you leave the receiver to one side and it's still communicating with Bob. You haven't put it down. You need to close the session down by putting the phone down. So you're disengaging the energy that you are gifting to Bob. Now, that's common knowledge. But so many of us get so far beyond that common knowledge, we forget the simplicities of how energy functions. If you open up a line of energy, it will continue flowing with you until you close it. The amount of people that I work with healing over the years, some of which are healers themselves, they have got thousands upon thousands of what I call umbilicus energy points flowing out from them towards all people, situations, events, times and so on, because they've forgotten to close them down. They're exhausted all the time because their energy is just flowing out. So, you know, these are simple laws of energy. If you open up, if you plug the hairdryer in and don't switch it off, what's it going to do? It's going to continue functioning until it breaks. And you are the implement that will break if you don't do these simple things. So, you know, these are the things that I constantly reflect back to. You know, as a channeler also, you know, you are susceptible to some of the lower frequencies and lower energies. And, you know, sometimes you forget the simple things, and then a day or so later I'm going, something's not right. And I just tune back in and I can see something's attached itself to me. And all it's doing is it wants to learn from you. Yes, it's working on a different frequency to you. Yes, it may be feeding off your energy field. Yes, it might like something that you don't like. So you're suddenly finding your mind going in different directives. So those are the things to watch out for. So all you do is you go back and go, okay, when did I let that in? Oh, it was when I was talking to Jimmy down the road the other day. And you just close that down. Thank the energy form for coming. Don't fight it. Thank it for coming, because you've taught it something and it's taught you something, and you suggest that it goes back to where it came from. Do it nicely. Do it with care and compassion, just like you would a dog that's wandered into your garden, and you just say to it, thank you for coming in. It's not your garden. Yours is over there. Off you go. God bless you. Thank you. Now, 9 times out of 10, you'll get a success with that. So those are the simplicities that I try and bring into my life. Sometimes I forget to do them, but most of the times, if I do forget, I'm warned fairly early on. Now, what is a way shower? I've spoken about this. Now, I'm not a great one for pushing myself forward, particularly because I'm much happier to leave my head just below the parapet, because when you start portraying or stating that you might have some information and you impart it to people, there's always somebody that's going to go, well, that's not what I believe. That's fine. I never ever, and I hope I don't, enforce what information that I'm given upon other people. It's, you know, invariably enough, I have to wait for somebody to ask me my advice, which is often frustrating when you can see your friends, lovers, and so on, making mistakes that you can see are so obvious to resolve. But it's not my business to stop them learning. So if they come up and say to me, Robin, what's going on with me? I've got, thank goodness. Well, would you like me to help you? And they go, yes. There's the permission. That's when you have the right to go and help somebody. Prior to that, you don't. And if you enforce yourself upon somebody, that's an invasion. You're forcing your system upon somebody else. Now, you might recognise that because we have plenty of that going on in our world, where we're forced to do something we don't want to do. So, I don't want to be doing that to anybody. But 20 years ago, I started writing a book. And, I'm probably not a natural author. I'm possibly more a natural speaker. So to convert my words that come out of here into the written form is quite difficult for me. But nevertheless, I wrote a book. And my book is called Dreamscape. And this isn't about me promoting this book for monetary gain, because it isn't. This book in itself is a novelistic form, really stating what I know or what I feel and what I've experienced. And I've brought characters into it that portray that component within. And I like reading my own book, just as I kind of like reading and watching what I have to say after it's been filmed, because it's new to me. What came out in that book is my life and what's happened to me and how I recognise the fact that I am a way shower. Now, we went into this very slightly last time, and I'm going to try and impart to you what that means to me. We spoke about the big phone that was picked up and the message sent out to beings in the universe. Now, why are these beings out in the universe? How did they get there? Well, once upon a time, sounds like a good story, doesn't it? A novel or a fairy story. Once upon a time, we all knew we were universal beings. What does that mean, universal beings? It meant that when we went and passed away from an existence as a soul carrier, we had the opportunity to incarnate in different arenas within the universe that we are within, that matched your conscious settings. You weren't just incarnating on planet Earth. Now, I could go into the ins and outs of why and what and why we are trapped in the karmic loop on planet Earth. And if this is difficult for people, or they find it confusing, or they want to poke me in the eye because I'm saying it because they don't want to hear it, that's fair enough. Tough information has to be delivered by somebody. And maybe I'm that one today for you. Now, my head's above the parapet right now. I'd like to duck down really, but I'm not going to. I'm going to stick with this one. The karmic loop in itself, always to me from a very young child, was an unjust system. It didn't work well with me. I think karmic energy and the way it works and the way I've heard it work and the way I've seen situations play out always seemed unjust and frankly not very loving and caring. But what it is energy working through energy, as I said in the previous video. So, bit of information here. Very young, thought the karmic loop was unjust, didn't know how or why or what was involved in that. So let's just move on swiftly from that just a bit further on, and you find yourself life after life after life reincarnating in similar situations, similar family veins and so on. and you're all teaching each other lessons, and often it's very, very difficult to remove yourself from the burning fire that's going on within the problems. And that's what happens. Now that in itself shouldn't be happening. We should have the opportunity, as and when we pass on, to be able to move out into the universe and incarnate elsewhere. But we're being recycled for a reason. Now, I'm not going to go into the negative aspects of that, but that's what's going on. I have no compunction to think otherwise. So we've got a system that isn't functioning and working for us. But as I say to you, it's energy playing within the pie chart. Love inverse of love, back to love again. So we're getting to the point right now where that 2,000 year cycle has come to conclusion, and we're getting to the point, as I discussed, where we have an opportunity to make a jump, and the energy can separate and it can start a new process, which frankly I wouldn't mind being involved in the new one. So how is that going to happen when there are some people out in the universe that were here originally? There's some people trapped on the planet that have been trapped here for eternity. There's some people elsewhere. We're talking people, we're talking energy forms here that are out in the universe. They're all being called back. And they're being called back to the now, to the present, to reconvene and re-establish the origins of when that cycle started. So it's a little bit like all the toys that have been scattered throughout the house from the children playing are being put back into the box again. So play can start again. Now, there's an analogy for you. This is difficult, and it's often very difficult for me to be able to place words that are courteous enough for people to be able to latch on to what it is that I'm trying to say. So I'm hoping I'm doing a reasonable job in doing so. So here we are back here. We were called back. We were called back. So there are many beings here that have the subtleties of complete and utter love. Some beings that come from different places. You have the whole gamut of energy coming back to the planet. And most of them are close to the spectrum or on the spectrum. They have levels of dyslexia. They have all sorts of things. So they do not enter into white collar work. So they do not enter into the mapping of brain conditioning. It's so important to remember this. I'm severely dyslexic. I have real issues with learning and other bits and pieces in the sense of learning how we're taught to at school. But I learnt in different ways, just as you guys have. So a lot of children turned up on the spectrum. They turned up with disabilities. They turned up with all sorts of things. So they don't go into the standardised process of the Western world. You know, and how many of them are there? Many. There's been thousands upon thousands upon thousands pouring back onto planet Earth with totally new aspects of love, totally new aspects of decision, swamping families with decisions they've never had to consider before. But one thing that it's done is it's allowed a unity to return. It's allowed people to begin to understand that I can't spend my life thinking about my own needs. I need to look after this one's needs otherwise. So what it's doing is it's utilising, bringing back something that is and has been lost. Family unity. It's really, really important. Even if some of your family members in themselves are people that you feel you don't like very much. They're there for a reason, they're there for you, and you're there for them. So you have to do your very best with them and love them. You know, I was reading yesterday in a book, and you know, I've got many different ways of explaining things, but I just love this statement, and it's very bold. The world has learned over and over again that the wounds of the ancestors make the children bleed. Now, you know, if you look in the Bible, it makes a similar statement. The sins of the fathers are passed down to the third and fourth generation. We're talking about genetics here. The Indian Vedics say it slightly differently. You must be careful how you love, because on the waves of love you can affect the people you most care for. So what needs to happen is a remapping. Our genetics needs to be remapped, rechanged, and it needs to reverse back to where it was. Yes, it isn't going to happen in this lifetime. It's probably not going to happen in the next lifetime, but it's going to happen. That new mapping system has to happen. Now, we were asked recently about earth changes by somebody through the Avalon forum. You know, I've been seeing this and I've been seeing that. If you focus through fear, you are going to see fearful aspects of potentials. Now, I try not to focus through fear, and it is difficult in this day and age. But you see, you know, I can't encourage us enough. Us, and I say us, those are the individuals that carry the light, that have this divine instruction within them, that the decisions they're making are right for themselves. And that's all you can do. Make that decision for yourself. What feels right to me through here, through your divine consciousness. Now, yes, we're being swamped with fear, and I spoke about that in the previous video. The fear is to do with keeping one set of circumstances in play and keeping them maintained. Now, as I said last time, what's actually happening is a mitotic process where the cell is dividing. Look at that cell as planet Earth. Let's just use that to utilise and compartmentalise this. Planet Earth separating, creating a new one, if you like to look at it at that. But it isn't. What it is energy dividing. That's all it is. And believe it or not, the new energy that separates will also be working parallel with the old one on the planet. It'll just be in a different frequency, doing a different thing. And then consciousness can reboot and start again. And then we can see what happens with that consciousness in the form of energy. Energy always meets itself in return. I believe it's Newton's third law. For every action, there is an equal opposite reaction. Is that the right one, Sam? It is. Okay. Newton's third law. Got that right. I was a bit worried there.
Well, I can't say for sure.
But I think it's right. Close to that. I think it's close to that. I'm not a scientist, but I when I see something, I think, okay, that's it in layman's terms. So what we have to do at this point in time is understand that the nature of what it is we're feeling, the nature of what it is that's happening, and the nature of what actually is happening outside of us is all happening for a reason. And that reason is to allow consciousness the facility to move from this paradigm to the next. It will not happen whilst you are in the human framework. Don't think it's going to happen there, because it won't. But bearing in mind, the human framework is something that contains and maintains your cells whilst you are within human framework. When you move out of the framework, you discard these cells. They reassemble themselves in energy. And everything you've been and everything you have been part of is written in that energy, in that mapping. And it's in your DNA, the most remarkable recording device ever available. Hang on to it. It's really important. Don't give it away. I'm talking to you in code there because that's really important to understand. You are a soul carrier. You carry your soul and you have the divine right to carry that soul. Do not give that soul away to anybody or anything, because it's yours. Okay? That soul in itself is your eternal connection to where you came from, which is the God force. You reside within the body of God, or within the body of light, the units that we all sparked away from. Okay, it's the way I see it. Now, if other people don't see it that way, fine. You know, I'm not imploring that this is truth. I'm just imploring that this might be my truth. And if that truth works for you, I'm really, really happy to share that. So, what are the way showers? What are they here to do? You know, am I confusing matters by going off elsewhere? No. What I'm actually trying to do is create and stretch your minds, just as mine has been stretched to the gamut of its ability on many occasions, to the point where it wants to pop. I do not use my mind to gain information anymore. I stopped doing that a long while ago. The mind is one version of you. You have three. You have the body and the spirit, the Father, Son, the Holy Ghost. Whatever you like to call it, the conscious, the subconscious, the superconscious. Those are your connectivities. If you just use one, which is the mental plane, you are residing in one area of yourself and it's out of balance. You need to try and incorporate the Trinity. If you just use the mental plane, it's out of balance. You need to speak to your soul and communicate with your soul. You also need to communicate with your spirit. The three do not work in coordinates with each other. It's very strange. You know, sometimes they battle with each other. The mental plane is trying to override what your soul or your spirit is trying to say to you. And this is why you end up with what I call white noise in your head when you try to meditate. Because you've got conflicting energy forms all coming in from who, you ask? From you. Coming from you. It's all your noise, it's all your feelings, it's all your sensations, it's all your componentizations that have gone through the whole gamut of incarnate experiences throughout the arena of the universe that you are part of. Now that universe is part of you and you are part of it. Now, I was told a long, long while ago that the conch shell in itself is a microcosm of the universe, and I thought, well, how does that work? If you find yourself at the entrance of the conch shell, there aren't any angles within the conch shell. It's a smooth, sparring surface, and you move right to the centre. And as you get to the centre, you immediately are returned back to the opening again. That's how time and space work. It doesn't get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it just is taking up a huge amount, and our mental plane can't think about that. All it actually does is it divides and folds back inside itself and comes out. That's how the mapping works. So a whole universe could be happening inside something so small. This whole universe. And then other universes could be doing the same. Now, could that be one cell within the body of God? The body of God that we broke away from? You know, these are sorts of things that go through my mind. I'm not yet ready to discuss the ramifications of that, but I'm ready to have the portrayal of the possibility of these things. So it's very fascinating when you allow yourself to quantify the information that comes from the three arenas, the mind, body and soul. Now, everyone has the ability to do this. And the only way you're going to get good at it is firstly, believe it. Secondly, switch your mind off. Thirdly, start trusting your inner being, your inner self. And use something so remarkable. And I call it, it's written in the book, it's called the inner knowing. When I started working with what I call the inner knowing, it gave me huge quantities of confidence to be able to go, okay, that's all right. It's all right for now until tomorrow morning when it changes, and I'm okay with that too. We don't have level platforms to play from. You know, the playing field is changing all the time. It always has done. If you build a wall around your knowledge, incidentally, people call them experts because they've built a wall around the knowledge and they're kind of expert. Okay, I'm not an expert. I'm somebody that's prepared to change my dialogue from day to day to day. Nothing stays the same. It was never designed to stay the same. It's always on the move. But it's on the move because it's going through its decisive motion of when you come up with a thought, an idea, a process, that process always has to meet itself in reverse, the inverse of it. That's how energy works. Newton's third law. So, let's get back to way showers. Let's just suppose that you that I'm talking to today is a weight shower. The very fact that you might be interested in hearing what I have to say and what Carolyn has shared and what Sam is filming, the very fact that you're doing that probably states that you have been called back here to the planet at this point in time, because it's crucial that it goes through a separation. Now that separation isn't going to be a magnanimous big bang and a crash. What it is separation. Just like a process of cell division when you are a child. When you are a child and you are learning things, when you go out and grab a ball across the floor when you're very young, your body goes through the process of what's called cell division. It grabs the ball, clasps its hands together, and then it goes, wow, that's what that does. And your body then replicates that information in a cell, and it divides. And then as you do it more, it'll divide again and divide again and divide again until you have tens of thousands of cells. And grabbing the ball then becomes a process where you don't even have to think about it. It's happening simultaneously, and it just happens symbiotically with actions. Now, maybe what we're doing is going through the symbiotic action of cell division, just on a gargantuan scale if you look at it like that. But remember the conch shell, it takes you right back to minuscule. So everything can be big or small or mediocre depending on how you look at it. Now I know this might be confusing to some people and there's lots of information, but watch it once or twice. It will come to you because you're ready for it. You're ready to hear what this means. Just as I'm ready to share these verses. So, you've come back to planet Earth. Your heart has gone through a gamut of emotions. You have experienced loss and found. You have experienced all sorts of situations. You've realised that money actually has no value. You've realised that the only thing that truly has value is love and kinship. Those are the things that are most important. As far as I'm concerned, the most successful thing I can do is teach my children to be good. And I cannot do that by telling them. I have to do it through action alone, through exemplarism. And that's not easy. It's very, very easy to tell lies. But it's also very difficult to remember them if you've got to keep revoking them and changing them. So the best thing to do is live your truth. And if your truth involves letting go of all the things you think are important, like all the stuff in the loft and in the garage, all the things you've been clamouring onto because you think they're important, all the houses and cars and things that you have that you think are important, none of them are important. Yes, they have meaning. Yes, they have an importance somewhere in the materialistic world, but you take none of that with you. None of it. The only thing you take with you is what you have written in energy in the life that you spent. And if that legacy is written in love and care, then you've done a super job. Now there might be people that might be watching this going, well, my first 20 or 30 years I was a really bad dog and I did naughty things and I really regret those and I can't ever erase those. Of course you can. Everyone has to be something. But you have an opportunity to educate yourself. The Aboriginals have a saying, and I just absolutely love this. We do not educate our children in linear time. They will educate themselves in their own time. Sometimes it takes a year, sometimes it takes 50 or 60 years before they become educated. That is what you're doing. If in the last breath that you spend on planet Earth, you become educated, and that education frankly means you open your heart up and let go. You forgive yourself and you forgive other people. Forgiveness, incidentally, is possibly one of the most misconstrued words as far as I'm concerned. Forgiveness does not mean that what happened or what the action of somebody was all right. Doesn't mean that. Forgiveness means you are prepared to let go of what it's doing to you. It's so powerful when you realise what that means. Because you were forgiving Bob who abused you when you were a child. And so many of us have been abused. It's part of the apprenticeship. You have to serve your apprenticeship. And your apprenticeship means that you actually recruit situations into your life so you learn from them. It's really, really difficult to come to terms with that. Why would you be angry with people that are teaching you lessons? It's very, very difficult, and this might raise a few eyebrows. I'm sorry, but if you are to move on from where you are as an individual, you must forgive. And at the moment, every single person on the planet is forced to look at themselves in the mirror, because if you are to move to the next paradigm shift, you cannot take any of this stuff with you. You've got to work through it. You've got to accept it, and you must let it go. And you might go, well, how can I do that? I was in the Vietnam War. I was in Afghanistan. I've shot people. I've done stuff. You know, I feel sick to the teeth about what it is that I've seen or what it is that I've done. You have to forgive yourself. You have to let this go, because you are going through the same emotions that other people are going through, and you have to let it go. And it's so, so important to realise that it is your opportunity at this point in time to let huge, huge things go. All you actually do is you forgive yourself, and you forgive the person that administered whatever it was, or forgive a situation. And you might go, well, how do I do that? Do it as many times as you can until you feel the bubbles up your spine when you know it's gone. Because we're all going through that. We're all going through that. Every single one of us, me inclusive, we're going through letting go of things, possibly things you thought you had worked through. There's also situations that are lifetimes back, and you don't have the enlightenment to understand what they mean. But what you do is you gather a big ball of forgiveness and a big ball of letting go, and you do it. Now, nobody said it's going to be easy. Find a way that suits you. Find a way that is loving and caring. Draw in the Christ light. Now, Jesus Christ came down to planet Earth as a human being. You know, he had 12 disciples. Each of those 12 disciples were the different gamuts of experience on planet Earth. They were thieves, they were beggars, they were accountants. He gathered them all together because he needs to learn from them and they needed to learn from him. Now, he went through the process of many processes that weren't pleasant for him. He knew what it was about, but that was for 2,000 years ago. That is not for today. As I said last time, I firmly believe that the Christing is within every single person that is prepared to make a difference right now. It's within your heart. It's within your consciousness. It's within the you that you are that is doing good. Try and be forgiving. Try and love your neighbours that have barking dogs and rusty old cars and rubbish outside. If you don't like where you live, it doesn't suit you, move. And if you say to me, well, I can't because of circumstance, well, there's no such thing as I can't. You know, there are many people that look at problems. I don't look at problems, I look at solutions. Solutions are the key. If you are not being bathed in the right waters, go and find waters that suit you. Now, we come right back down to you as a human being, right back down to you as the person with problems and unresolved issues and so on. But also, you are a spirit, you are a soul carrier, and you are a mental plane worker. So, resolve your issues in the best possible way you can. Do them lovingly, do them with care, and do them with compassion. Now, this isn't about nagging you, this isn't about taking you to places you don't want to go. But what it is doing is going, look, you have the impetus, you have the knowledge. The practice days was yesterday and the day before. Today it's real time. This is where everything you've learnt, everything you've brought to the table needs to be used and looked at. Don't ask your neighbour, don't ask Bob up the road for the answer to your problems. You go and find them. You resolve them yourself. Look at people that are doing it, and if they've done something that you haven't done, go and ask them. There's nothing better than somebody coming and asking you for advice, because we all love to share something. But most people that have true knowledge do not share it unless you ask them. If you need healing, go and ask somebody for it. They're not going to come up and tell you you need it. They're delighted to give it to you. You know, there's lots of things that you can do as an individual to get you through what I call this elastin. And if you look at it, if you want to move out of one situation to another, most of the time it's a little bit like walking away and your braces got caught on the door handle. And the further you get away from the problem, the more it wants to bring you back to it. And instead of resisting the elastin, you get to the point where you realise that you can't go any further. And you turn around and you look at the problem. And you look at it and you say, I don't need you anymore. Thank you for what you've shown me. I really appreciate where it's taken me, but I don't need it anymore. I forgive myself for going down that road, and I forgive all people involved in it, and I step out of it. That's how you do it in human terms. Because I use that all the time and have done for years and years. It works for me. Take it away, use it for yourself. Do it with love. And if something's still hanging on, it means you might need to do it again, or you might need to add to that process. Keep working through the things until all the balls in the bowl are empty, and then you're left with what's known as an empty vessel. Doesn't mean to say you're an empty vessel, incidentally. What it means is you are not carrying the weight of anything but yourself. An empty vessel is something that is carrying its unity, its united process with the God force, and it means that it's ready to move without any issues. That's what you will become. But you have to work for that. Do not be blaming anyone for your problems. Do not be blaming mum, dad, aunt, uncle, my brother, my sister. You can't. Blame is a game. Let go of that blame and just accept and forgive and move on. Become an empty vessel. Now, you know, to be able to change the way we are as human beings, because something is very, very wrong, and we can all see that. You know, you watch the news, you watch the wildlife programs where the seas are stripped of coral and life, and you know the Northwest Patch is opening up, and we're going to have ships coming through the Antarctic arenas, and you know it's going to affect the migration of the whales and all sorts of things. You know, you look at all these things and go, this can't go on, and it can't. We're not here for a day or 2 or 100 years. We're here forever. And yes, you might go, well, it's a facade, but it's our facade. It's the one that we are here to look after. Yes, we are right at the point where everything's accumulating, coming back to itself. But you see, recognition is the key. Recognition that this cannot continue, and I am not going to be part of the game. So you go, okay, this game's getting a bit rough, and people are getting bloody nose, and it's not right. I'm not playing anymore. Sorry. And you step to one side and you walk to the sidelines. You go, I'm going to stand in my light and go, I'm not prepared to perpetuate the continuation of what we call madness, and it is madness. So you stand in your light and you go, I am prepared to be me. I'm prepared to be honest, and I'm prepared to look at what it is that I need to do. And I also need to understand that what is going on is not going to be what I wish, and I'm going to change myself. Now, I had no idea that this is the place that I was going today and what I was going to talk about. But, you know, I believe that what's been spoken about today is very, very important because, you know, I always said to Carolyn over the years, you know, I've always been about one step in front of a lot of other people, simply because I experience it first, and then it comes on board within me as an individual, and then I have to try and translate that into human form and trying to project words that's articulating its meaning. So sometimes, you know, the new stepping stones that are placed in front of humanity, I have the opportunity to just try the ones out before the rest of you maybe. It doesn't make me special, incidentally, it just makes me kind of, you know, it's a little bit like Shackleton going out towards the ice caps and so on. You know, you're doing something first, and somebody has to do those things to see what they're like and see if it works and so on. So what I'm actually saying is, look, I'm sticking my head above the parapet and going, look, there's a lot of people out there that need some help and assistance. A lot of people out there that have a huge amount of spiritual knowledge and connection that feel incredibly lost at the moment because they're doubting themselves. And they're doubting themselves because they are disconnected from groups. They're disconnected from what it is that's nourished them in the past because they haven't ever felt strong enough, possibly, to sit in their own light and make their own decisions. But that's what you've got to do right now. You genuinely have got to sit on your own, with your own thoughts, work with your own heart. And the most important thing is, you know, if what it is that you're doing and thinking is loving and caring, then you're never venturing far away from where you need to be. You know, when a shepherd is out there looking after his flock, he knows there's wolves and lions and other bits and pieces around him, and he has a few dogs that protect his... But there's always one or two strays that go out and then they come back, and he crooks them in, and he cherishes and he looks after his flock. We're all like that as human beings, you know. We're always going to venture away and towards the wolves sometimes. But we come back to the flock, and the flock isn't humanity. The flock is you reconvening with all the cells that you've been involved in. Back to you, uniting with you. So what's happening right now is everything you've been, every aspect of yourself, both within and without, is reconvening and coming back. A little bit like all the children that left the planet when elsewhere are reconvening back on the earth. The same thing's happening because you could imagine, let's utilise just some thoughts here, you know. Right, this planet Earth's had a good old game for 2,000 years, and all the bits and pieces are back into the bottle and the cork's put back on. We're going to shake it back up again, and then we're going to put that bottle over there. But there's a replication of it here, because some of those things want to stay and some of them want to go over there. And then the bottle's shaken again and the process and game starts again. And you might go, why are you calling it a game? It's called the game of life. It's called the game of energy moving through its process of learning. Now, as I mentioned last time, energy and love are divinely different. Love overlooks, does not intervene. Energy, the moment consciousness awareness gets involved, it creates like a small spasm within the energy form, and that energy form then starts creating movement, and within that movement it starts creating cells. If you're in the physical world, of course, if you're in the non-physical world, it will create something else. But nevertheless, consciousness does something remarkable. It builds. That's what it does. That's its job. It builds. And as it builds and gets bigger and bigger, it uses the unique spectrum of how the universe, which is it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds and spirals backwards, and then it comes back and meets itself. So it never actually gets huge. What it actually does is constantly curve round, just like the universe does. You know, this is quantum stuff, and it's very, very difficult to try and portray what that means in layman's terms. But hopefully I've done a reasonable job of it. I had ideas as to where I was going to go today, and I've gone other places. And but I think that when I say I, and I notice when I speak there's a lot of I's in there, you know, it isn't I as in me. This is I as in the information that comes through me, because yes, I do articulate it, and it does come strained down through the mental plane on occasions. And when I drift back into the mental plane, if I suddenly had a conversation with Carolyn or Sam right now, it takes me a moment or two to recalibrate and move back out of that mental plane and get my level of thought that's coming right the way through here. It's not coming through here, it's coming through here into my heart. And I use a flow, it's called the inner knowing, and it comes out. And half the time, this information is information that I do not know. I've heard it for the first time, just like you. And I'm, you know, astounded by it in many ways. But you see, it comes strange through this piece of kit. So I know it's coming in the loving and caring arena. Occasionally you have to venture out away from that, and you have to go to slightly dark arenas, because that's the gamut of human experience. Carolyn, do you have anything to add on?
Well, what an enjoyable morning I've had, sitting here listening and learning and wondering what's coming next. This is how it's been for me, all these years that I've had to listen to Robin. You never know what's coming next, and I love it, and I love the information he shared today, and I just hope that it makes you think, it makes you grow in consciousness, and you all open your heart. Because if we all open our heart, the world will be a wonderful place, and everything that's going on will change. Slowly, slowly, catchy monkey, but it will change. So carry on opening your hearts, carry on listening. I will tell my stories, Robin will talk to you again, and thank you Sam, for being who you are and giving us this wonderful opportunity. Cakes all round?
Absolutely. Cakes all round. God bless you. Thank you.
God bless you.